there are 7 energy bands described in our scriptures. And you will be surprised if you read about it that there are energies including infrared, ultraviolet, electricity, sound, light. All these energies are very clearly described in our scriptures. And those are again 7 types of energies, 6 of which are known to modern science. 7th one is called Manojava, which is the energy that travels faster than mind, or definitely much faster, even faster than light. Now, modern science till today believed, or until recently believed, that light is fastest. Nothing travels faster than light or electromagnetic waves. But now science is discovering that there is something that can travel faster than light. And that is clearly described in our scriptures. So I'll share my screen and then we'll discuss some concepts from one of the Vedic scripts or one of the Vedic hymns, whatever you can call it, and try to understand it from scientific mindset. Typically, when we look at any religious text, our interpretations are mostly related to religious aspects or spiritual aspects and things of that nature, bhakti and bhav related aspects. But today we will focus more on scientific aspects. So what these scriptures are, what do they mean, what is the science behind it, and how is it relevant in today's world, so on and so forth. Those are the aspects and those are the areas that we will focus on. If you ask anybody, as a Sanatan followers or as Hindus, what are your scriptures? Now, if you ask that question to Christians, they will say Bible. If you ask that to Muslims, they will say Quran and so on. So for Hindus, if you ask what is your scripture, we get different answers. Most commonly, people will say it's Bhagavad Gita. Some people will say something else. And if you ask them, okay, Bhagavad Gita, fine, what is even more core of that or before that or ancient than that? Then some people might say some Puranas, some Upanishads. And if you go even beyond that, then it is Veda. Beyond Veda, there is nothing. That is the first guiding principle or the core of our belief system and our guiding principles. But if you go to the next question and ask people, okay, what is there in the Veda? What are these Vedas? What is written in the Veda? Then most people kind of fumble. They won't be able to answer that. And their answers could be something like, it's some rituals, some religious, some prayers, and some yajna, some answers like that we will hear. But what does Veda mean? What does the word Veda itself mean? So, Veda word comes from origin or original root word called Ved. And Ved is a verb, it means to know. And Veda means knowledge. So the guiding principles or our scriptures that we call it as Veda are nothing but books of knowledge. Even by the definition or by the name itself, it means Veda is book of knowledge. And it has all kinds of knowledge. If we really understand, then there is knowledge about what we are going to see today is little bit of aspect of astronomy and astrophysics. Then there is a knowledge about medical, agriculture, social sciences, society and structure of society, and so on and so forth. There is tremendous knowledge on pretty much every topic that we can think of. We are going to focus, as I said, is one aspect called creation of the universe. And there are a lot of modern theories about it. And we will see how those modern theories also talk about similar aspects that were documented in Vedic scriptures thousands of years ago. Then you might hear other question. Okay, those are your scriptures. Who wrote those? And when were those written? So we'll touch upon that a little bit. So the dating of Veds is not recorded. But there are certain references given. Most of those are astronomical references given in Vedic literature. Based on that, different scholars try to interpret or try to decode and find out when the Veds were written. Now, one important thing is we all know that there are 4 Veds, but all the Veds were not written by a single Rishi and not written at the same time. Okay, different Rishis wrote different things or different segments which were combined eventually in and organized into 4 Veds. So it's not one Rishi sat and wrote all 4 Veds at the same time. It is not like that. Over a period of time, Veds were built or constructed or written, whatever you want to say. Now, who wrote these Veds? We believe that Veds are apaurusheya, meaning those are not man-made or not written by humans. Then who wrote those? And you might hear some people ask some funny questions and criticize about this apaurusheya aspect. But this apaurusheya aspect is very, very simple and very practical. The rishis who wrote these Veds confirmed 2 aspects or 2 things about these Veds. First is, when I say I wrote a story or I wrote a song or I wrote a poem, that means, okay, it was my composition. It came to me and I wrote it, rewrote it, changed it, whatever. But when these rishis wrote Veds, they said, no, it is not something that came to me. This is something that I heard. It is there in the universe. And in a certain meditative state, I heard those. And whatever I heard, I just reproduced it exactly the same way. So it's not my construction. It's somebody gave it to me. So they did not take any credit. And that's why it is called apaurusheya. And second aspect, it is not written, as I said, they just said that I did not write it. I was just an instrument. So I cannot take a credit for these compositions or writings. So they say it is not me. And that is why also it is called apaurusheya. Now today we will talk, as I said, is the creation of universe aspect. Now we are going to use the word creation throughout this discussion. However, our belief system says, our scriptures say that this is not really a creation. Creations mean something that never existed and now you created it or you built it, right? Whereas our belief is whatever we see today existed already. It just existed in different form and now it manifested in different form. So this is really speaking a manifestation. Manifestation of what? Manifestation of what we call it as a Ishwar or Bhagwan or Parameshwar or Parabrahma, Paramatma, whatever different names we use. All those names mean same thing. And we will see what Purusha means in a minute. But these are all manifestations of same Ishwar or Parameshwar or Paramatma. Okay. So with that, we will get into more details about the Purusha Sukta itself. What is Purusha Sukta? Purusha Sukta is one of the Sukta. Sukta is hymn, which is collection of mantras found in Vedic literature. Now, one of the things about Purusha Sukta is only Sukta which appears in all 4 Veds. So it is that important. Yes, there are minor variations in different Veds, but this is the only Sukta that appears in all 4 Veds. Now, what does Purusha Sukta mean? Just by the name, by definition, what does it mean? Okay, so Sukta, as I said, it is collection of mantra. Like Stotra, we might have heard of, right? Or a chapter in different scriptures. So it is collection of few mantras. Together it is called Sukta. Sukta is Su-Ukta. That means well said. Su is very well and Ukta is said. So Sukta is well said or something that is very properly said or very precisely articulated or which has a lot of meaning behind it. Those kind of collections are called Sukta. And then second thing is, what is Purusha? Now on this itself, we many times hear some criticism about our literature or about our religion in general. Because people say, see, you have Purusha Sukta, you don't have Stri Sukta. So you have only Purusha, you are giving importance only to Purusha or men and not to women, and things like that. You hear that kind of criticism. Whereas, as we will understand in a minute, in this context, the Purusha having to do with men or male human being. Okay, it has actually nothing to do with any human aspect at all. So what is Purusha? Many people, if you read any explanations or any commentaries about different scriptures, Purusha word is always split as Puri Shayanat. What is Puri? Puri is a Pura, or in today's day and age, Pura is a city or a gaon or a town, right? We have a lot of towns and cities in India that end up with Pura name after that, right? So Pura means a city, or rather it means a definable space. Different texts have used word Pura for different in different contexts, indicating different things. Those who have read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Sri Krishna describes human body as Navadware Pure Dehi. So the human body is called as Pura. In the context of Vedic literature, Pura is the entire universe. So Pura and Sha. So what is Pura and Sha? Pura is entire universe, and Sha, traditionally people have, in my opinion, misinterpreted this word. They have interpreted it Puri Shayana, sleep. So the one who sleeps in the entire universe is Purusha. Now, I was thinking, if it is sleeping in the universe, it cannot be active. It is in the sleeping state, so it cannot be active. And then I realized that in Devanagari script, there are two different alphabets which sound similar, Sha and Sha. For clarity, the Sha that we use in Shankar or Shiva is different than the Sha we use in Krishna, right? So in word Purusha, the Sha used is the Sha that comes in Krishna. In Shayana, the Sha that comes is the Sha used in Shiva. So people have used wrong Sha and interpreted it as Puri Shete or Puri Shayana. If we use correct Sha, then it comes, or it can be split as Pura and Usha. Usha or Usha. What is Usha? Usha is early morning or dawn, that kind of time. What happens at Usha? We start receiving sunlight and the entire earth becomes active, receives energy, and a lot of activities start. We get light. That aspect, in that Konchayati, meaning the one that activates and it provides energy to the entire universe. Now, this aspect that provides the energy, it's not a human, it's not a man, it's not an animal or a creature. It is a form of energy, which we all call it as Ishwar, or as we were talking, it can be Paramatma, Parameshwar, Ishwar, Bhagavan, different names we use. Different names except Dev. Dev is different as compared to Ishwar. So that Ishwar, that Shakti, that energy, that power is described as Purusha. In Purusha Sukta, the description says that the Purusha performed a yajna, and through this yajna, universe was manifested, or universe was created. Now, what is yajna? If I ask anybody what is yajna, typically we think of yajna as something that is, where we put some bricks together and we burn some wood and put some ghee or butter and different kind of things we offer into that fire. That process we think is yajna. That is right, but that is just one form of yajna. That is not what yajna means. Yajna indicates any process in which one form is offered to obtain another form. That process is called yajna. And Purusha Sukta says that Purusha himself performed the yajna. Now, when he performed yajna, universe was not created. So what did he offer in the yajna. So he offered himself as an oblation or as an offering in that yajna. And what came out is another form of that Purusha itself, which is what we perceive today as a universe. So Purusha itself converted himself from one form to other form to create the universe. And that process is called yajna. With that, we'll start with some of the mantras that we have that are there in Purusha Sukta. Again, there are 16 mantras. We will not go through all 16. Okay, we'll just touch upon few important ones, and then I'll give you some links where you can get more information about rest of the mantras. Now, before I start reading this and before I start explaining this, you will see that the script that is here, it is Devanagari or English, whatever you see, but there are something different. What is different? You will see that there are some underlines and some dashes and things like that above and below the text. That is called intonation. What is intonation? So again, when rishis heard this, they heard it in different tones. Different words were heard in different tones or different pitch. Some were heard in high pitch, some were heard in lower pitch, some were heard in normal pitch, so on and so forth. Okay. So that is called intonation or swarita. So those swaras are followed, or that intonation should be followed while chanting any mantra. So sometimes we hear people singing Gayatri mantra. As per our scriptures, that is not right way to chant Gayatri mantra or any mantra for that matter. Mantra needs to follow the original intonation. And shlok on the other side does not have any such rule. Shlok you can chant in different ways, different intonations. You can sing it, do whatever you want to do. Because shloks are not shloks are man-made, composed or constructed by some humans, some rishis or so on. Whereas Veds are heard. That's why Veds are also called Shruti Grantha. And the rest of the literature is called Smriti Grantha. So Shruti and Smriti, you must have heard it. And that is the reason for that. So with that background, we'll start. So the first mantra says, Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sa Bhumim Vishwato Vritva Atyatishthad Dashangulam. So let's understand the literal meaning or most common meaning, and then we'll understand what it really means scientifically. What happens is when people interpret any ancient text, different words can have multiple meanings. And people often use the most conventional or most common meaning to interpret that text. And that sometimes may not be right. When we are interpreting any text, we have to keep the context in mind. Everybody agrees, even today, if you ask any of the Pandits and all so on, they all will agree that Purusha Sukta talks about creation of universe. So we have to keep that context, creation of the universe, as a context while interpreting any word or any mantra or any segment of the mantra and so on. Traditional meaning says that Sahasra Shirsha, that is thousands of heads. So there is this being, the Purusha, who has thousands of heads. Then he has thousands of eyes, Sahasraksha, and thousands of legs, Sahasrapat. Sa Bhumim Vishwato Vritva. Vritva is covers. So it covers the entire universe. And Atyatishthad Dashangulam. And beyond that entire universe, it extends by 10 inches. Now, that is what the typical meaning or interpretation of the mantra is. And then people start interpreting, oh, this 1,000-headed person is a god, and the god has thousands of heads. And then some artist will come and he will draw a picture of a human body with thousands of heads and so on and so forth. Those kind of things start because they don't understand what the real meaning is. So what this real meaning is, this first line, Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat, that first line indicates a stage at the time of creation of the universe, which is described in modern theory called Big Bang theory. Now, we will not go into details of Big Bang theory, but what does Big Bang theory say? That for some reason, there was a huge explosion, and through that explosion, the universe was born. Right? In a nutshell, in one line, that is what Big Bang theory says. Now, at that explosion, what happened is what is described in that first line. It says Sahasra Shirsha. First of all, Sahasra here does not mean 1,000. It means thousands of, or countless, or very large number of. Okay, so it's not exact 1,000. Sahasra Shirsha. Shirsha is what? Head. What does head indicate? Head indicates individuality or uniqueness, right? So, for any event, if we are organizing, the organizer says that, okay, per head, we will charge you X number of rupees. So per head does not mean he's going to charge for head and not for body and not for hand. No, per head means per individual. So it indicates individuality. It indicates something which is distinct from the rest. So that individuality is indicated, the uniqueness, the distinctness is indicated by the word Shirsha or head. So there were thousands of these, as a result of that explosion, thousands of objects got created, and those objects were individual. They were unique. They were distinct from each other. That was the first attribute of those objects that got created through the explosion. Then Sahasraksha. Aksha means eye. What does eye indicate? Eye indicates shine, luster, right? Spark. We can look at people and we say, oh, he has or she has spark in his eyes, or she has spark in her eyes. So that spark or that shine, that aspect is indicated by Aksha or eyes. So these objects, they were glowing and shining objects. They were created as a part of explosions. So obviously they were glowing, shining objects. And path or foot or legs, what do legs indicate? Legs indicate movement or motion. So these objects were in motion. Obviously they were created, they came out of an explosion, so they were moving. So you look at in Diwali, we burst firecracker. So if you look at the explosion of a firecracker, you see thousands of sparks come out and go in all different directions. It is exactly similar stage, exactly similar concept if somebody had to visualize creation of the universe. And that is what is described in this first line. And that is what modern theories also talk about. Then the second line says, Sabhumim Vishvato Vrutva Atyatishtat Dashangulam. So he, that Purusha, he covers the entire universe. Now, obviously, when the Purusha created the universe, where did he create the universe? Right? For creating something, you need space. So what was the space? In which space, in which room, in which area did he create the universe? So obviously, when he created the universe, there was nothing. If there was nothing, then where did he create the universe? So he created the universe within himself. If he created the universe within himself, obviously, he was covering that entire universe. So today, if I build something, let's say if I build a table in a room, that room covers that entire table from all sides, right? So the space in which I create my creation needs to be much bigger than that my creation itself. And the space will cover that entire creation. Exactly same concept. What it really means is the Purusha itself is far bigger, much, much, much bigger than the universe that we can perceive. This perceivable universe is just a small part of that Purusha, but the Purusha itself is much beyond that. And that's what, again, the second line or the last segment says. The last part says, Atyatishtat Dashangulam. So it extends beyond that universe by 10 inches or 10 fingers. Angula is fingers, right? So then people will say, okay, who measured those 10 fingers? Who was there? to measure that he extends only by 10 inches. So it is, the word 10 again does not mean, dasha doesn't mean 10 here. What does dasha mean? Literally, again, it means dasha. But here the interpretation is these numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, these are all Ganita. And there are 10 digits in our number system, 0 to 9. Whatever we cannot express in those 10 digits, 0 to 9, is something that is infinite, something that cannot be described. That is the aspect. So that Purusha itself, by 10, it means it is infinite. We don't know, it extends indefinitely or infinitely beyond the perceivable universe. And it is covering the entire universe. That is what this aspect or this first mantra talks about. The second mantra, again, it has some interesting scientific facts. So let's quickly touch upon some of those facts or some of those aspects. The second mantra says, Purusha evedagam sarvam yat bhutan yaccha bhavyam utamrutatvasyešanah yadanne nati rohati. It means Purusha evedagam sarvam. This Purusha itself is everything. Yat bhutam yaccha bhavyam. Whatever was in the past and whatever will happen in the past, in future, everything is nothing but Purusha. Whatever we see today, whatever exists today, whatever existed in the past, and whatever will exist in future is nothing but the Purusha itself. And then it says, Utam Rutatva Seshana. It is immortal. It is endless. Now we believe that nothing is immortal. Whereas here it clearly says there is something that is immortal. What is that immortal? That is the Purusha itself. And it clearly says that whatever existed in the past, whatever exists today, whatever will exist in future, it is nothing but different manifestations, different forms of the Purusha itself. So that Purusha keeps changing its forms, but it is permanent. It is indefinite. It is Amruta. It is immortal. Now this also, if you map back to scientific aspects, there is a theory called law of conservation of mass and energy, which states exactly same thing, that the matter and energy can never be created or destroyed, but it keeps changing its form and they are interchangeable. So matter can convert it into energy, energy into matter, and so on, right? So the same aspect of conservation is explained here in the first line. The last line says, Yadanne nati rohati. It says that Purusha provides food for the universe to help it grow, to help the universe grow. Now this again is a little difficult to understand, but very simple interpretation is, we all know that the universe is constantly growing. Even if, let's say, it was not growing, to sustain something, it needs energy. Right? For sustenance of, even for sustaining our body, we need energy. We need food. Right? Now, definition of food is different for different creatures. For us, food is what are rice and roti and stuff that we eat. Right? But for different organisms, food is different things. Not every organism can eat roti and rice, right? So for different organisms, whatever energy they need, whatever provides them the required energy is called food for their sustenance and growth, right? So if you look at this universe is constantly growing. It is being maintained. It is sustained. So what provides that energy? So whatever aspect provides that energy is food for the universe. Okay, it is as simple as that. Now, modern science doesn't know what that is. And since they don't know what it is, they call it as dark energy. Dark is like black. That means we don't know anything about it, but there is an energy that exists, which is used for sustenance and nourishment and maintenance and growth of the universe. So that dark energy is nothing but food, which is described here. And it clearly says that the Purusha itself provides that food. The Purusha itself is responsible for maintenance and nourishment and growth of the universe. So this is one again interesting mantra. So we'll just touch upon this one. It says, Yat Purushena Havisha Deva Yajnam Atanvata Vasanto Asya Sidajyam Grishma Idhma Sharad Havihi. Okay, so now it describes two different things here. It describes the Yajna and it describes different seasons. What it means is, by using this Purusha as offerings in the Yajna, Devas performed the Yajna. If I use the word God, it will be like a translation, but God and Deva are different things, and we'll see what it is. But using this Purusha as an offering, gods performed the Yajna, and in that Yajna, they offered these seasons, Vasanta, Grishma, and Sharad. Now again, it gets very confusing. First of all, the universe itself is being created, so the seasons did not exist. Even if seasons existed, how can I catch a season in my hand and offer it into something else? That's not possible. So what exactly does this mean here? Okay, so let's talk about it. So we talked about Purusha performed a yajna in which he offered himself as an oblation and created universe. Okay, as a process continued, as a process of formation of universe continued, various energies that were created by this same Purusha contributed in that process, and those energies are nothing but Deva. And there is more detailed description of this concept of Deva. But for now, just understand Deva as different energies. So different energies combined with Purusha to complete this process. And while this process was being performed, in that process, Vasanta, which is a spring season, Grishma, which is summer season, and Sharad, which is autumn season, they were offered as oblations. Now, as I said, how can somebody capture season and offer it into something else? So that is not possible. It's not possible. That means these words mean something else. They don't mean the seasons that we perceive today. Also, when we look at seasons, in all of our scriptures, there are 6 seasons described. Whereas here, it talks only about 3 seasons, right? So, if you understand that it does not really talk about season, but those words which are used to name seasons are used here with some other purpose or with some other meaning. Okay. So the first season they're talking about, first word is spring or Vasanta. Now what happens in spring? Spring is a season of creation, right? All new trees are born, or the trees get new leaves, new flowers, and so on and so forth. So the entire earth looks like it has come back to the life. So that creation aspect is indicated by word Vasanta here. Okay. The second aspect is Grishma. Grishma is summer. What happens in summer? In summer, we get maximum sunlight. And sunlight is required for our nourishment. Right? So we get a lot of nourishment, a lot of aspect that is required for our nourishment and sustenance. So that nourishment or sustenance aspect is indicated by summer. And Sharad, in Sharad Ritu, what happens? It's like a harvest season, right? So whatever we have built, it is now ready for next creation. That is what the harvest indicates, right? The fruits are ripened, the grains are ready, and so on and so forth. So these ripened fruits and grains are preparations for new creation. So this aspect of creation, sustenance, and annihilation or recreation is indicated by these 3 words. And in the context of this mantra, what it says is, as Purusha was performing this yajna, he knew that on the earth or in my universe, nothing can be permanent. In any given form. It will always keep on changing. New things will keep coming out. They will grow, and eventually they will lead to next creation. So that aspect of Utpatti, Sthiti, and Laya, what we believe in, is described here. So Purusha, before finalizing his creation of the universe, he introduced these three aspects of Utpatti, Sthiti, and Laya: creation, sustenance, and annihilation or destruction, whatever you want to interpret it as. Those three aspects were introduced, those three aspects were built in the universe so that the universe can perform properly throughout its life. This is again one interesting mantra we'll touch upon, seventh mantra. It says, now the process of yajna is now coming towards formation of earth by the time this mantra comes in Purusha Sukta. So now the focus is more towards earth than entire universe. Okay. So here it says, Saptasya san paridhayah trisapta samidha kritaha deva yajnan tanvanaha abadhnan purusham pashum. Okay. Now again, first we'll understand the literal or conventional translation or interpretation. It says Saptasya san paridhayah. So when any yajna is performed, there are some sticks that are laid around the yajna, and those sticks define boundaries of that yajna. Sima or boundary of the yajna is defined by those sticks. Now here, when they come to earth, they say that there were 7 boundaries were defined. Now when we again look at it from the context of earth, what are these 7 boundaries? These 7 boundaries are nothing but 7 continents, right? Or 7 oceans, whatever they define the boundaries of earth or land on the earth. So basically on the earth, 7 islands were formed. And there were 21 fuels used and continue to be used for formation and nourishment of the earth. Now, here Rishis have used the word Trisapta, 3 times 7. 3 times 7 is 21. But if Rishis were to say 21, they would have said 21. Why did they say 3 times 7? Again, when we interpret this text, we have to really go deep and understand every word and why that word is used in that mantra or in that context. So they did not use the word 21, they said 3 times 7. Most interpretations, if you see, then the interpreters, whoever or commentators, they have just added a lot of aspects till it adds up to 21. So they talk about Panchapran, Panchamahabhuta, Panchatattva, this, then Atma and Chitta, Buddhi, Ahankar, and all those things. There is a list. They just take a few of that and make it add to 21. And they say, oh, these are the 21 aspects. But they cannot explain why Rishis use the word Trisapta, 3 times 7. And they cannot also explain, if you are saying these Panchatanmatra, Panchatattva, whatever, all those things, adding up to 21, how did they contribute towards creation? That also they cannot explain. So if we really see, this word here says Trisapta, which means 3 times 7, meaning there were 3 different groups of energies. Each group had 7 individual energies, which contributed towards formation of the earth and even today for sustenance of the earth. Now, what are these 3 groups of 7? The first one is from sun, we get 7 types of energies. It's not 7 colors of white light. That is different. The types of energies that we get from sun themselves are categorized in 7 distinct forms. And that's why if you see any picture of sun god riding in a chariot, his chariot will always have 7 horses. And those 7 horses indicate these 7 types of energies that we receive from sun. So that is one form or one group of 7. The second group of 7 is in our scriptures, we talk about different grahas. Okay, so there is sun, there is moon, and then there are Mars and all the other planets. So all these planets are revolving around the sun in their orbit without colliding on each other, without escaping into the Avakash or space and so on. So they are revolving in that orbit because of different forces. And in the context of Earth, there are 7 other forces, attractive and repulsive forces from sun and moon and other planets, which help Earth to stay in its orbit. And those forces that form second set of 7. And then different energy bands. There are 7 energy bands described in our scriptures. And you will be surprised if you read about it that there are energies including infrared, ultraviolet, electricity, sound, light. All these energies are very clearly described in our scriptures. And those are again 7 types of energies, 6 of which are known to modern science. 7th one is called Manojava, which is the energy that travels faster than mind, or definitely much faster, even faster than light. Now, modern science till today believed, or until recently believed, that light is fastest. Nothing travels faster than light or electromagnetic waves. But now science is discovering that there is something that can travel faster than light. And that is clearly described in our scriptures. And they call it as Manojava. So anyway, so those 7 types of energies or 7 energy bands are described as a third set of 7. So these 3 sets of 7 helped in formation of the earth and continue to help in sustenance and maintenance of the earth. The second part says, Deva yadnyan tanvanaha abadnan purusham pashum. Now that part, abadnan purusham pashum, again, people misinterpret and use it to criticize our scriptures. People interpret this as the Pashu was offered as sacrificial, or was sacrificed, the animal was sacrificed in the yajna. But people who interpret this line this way, they don't even understand what is yajna. First of all, as we described, as we understood, yajna is not a process where the bricks are laid and fire is lit. Definitely in this context, that is not what yajna means. Secondly, this mantra still is talking about formation of the earth. And then in future mantras, subsequent mantras, you will see creation of life on earth. That means at this stage, life is not created on earth. If life is not created on earth, which animal was sacrificed? So there was no sacrifice that we think of today of killing a living animal and offering that animal. That concept did not exist, and that concept is not what this mantra talks about. Okay, so again, what this mantra means is, as a part of this yajna, as a part of this creation or manifestation of the universe, and now specifically earth, the sacrifice of Purusha continued. He continued to sacrifice himself, and continued to the formation of the earth. That is what it means. Once the earth is formed, then the sequence is also very clearly given in the living organisms. First, the plants were created, rather before plants, the water, then plants, then other animals. So that sequence is also very clearly given, and it is at this stage, the animals are not even created. So this mantra does not talk about animal sacrifice at all. Okay, now this mantra is kind of a question asked that, okay, everything was that Purusha manifested itself into different forms. Now, for interpretation of, for believing, for humans to believe, we always try to convert everything into some form of picture. And typically it's a picture of a god, and it is in the form of human. So now here again, rishis have imagined that this Purusha to be in the form of human, and then asked the question that if I imagine this Purusha in the form of human, and that later manifested into different things, what came out of his head or mouth and his arms and his legs and so on and so forth? What happened to different body parts? In which form did they manifest? That's the question this mantra asks. And then from 13th mantra to 16th mantra, the descriptions are given about what happened to different organs or different body parts of that Purusha. How did they manifest? Now, this 13th mantra, again, a lot of people use this to criticize our culture or our scriptures. So we'll just dive a little bit deeper into this. This mantra says, Brahmanosya mukhamasit bahu rajanya kritah uru tadasya yad vaishyah padbhyagam shudro ajayata. Again, literal translation, from his mouth, Brahmins were born, from his arms, Kshatriyas were born, from his thighs, Vaishyas were born, and from his feet, Shudras were born. Now, there are two issues in traditional interpretation and using that for criticism. First of all, here it is, still the life on the earth is still being formed. So the human society is still being formed. So before forming the society, there is no reason or no possibility of categorizing or dividing the society in 4 categories or 4 groups. So this is not talking about human society at all. Secondly, people say that it says Brahmanosya mukhamasit. So the Brahmins were born first, or Brahmins were first. So Brahmins are more superior, then Kshatriya, then Vaishya, and Shudras are inferior. That also is not true. This is not a sequence, or this is not a hierarchy. When I look at somebody, I say head to toe. Does that mean I'm only looking at head and head is important and toes are not important? No, I'm just describing in certain sequence. It's not hierarchy. Okay. And we'll see in a minute that this has nothing to do with social structure. This is talking about certain attributes of creation. So as the life was being created on the earth, this Purusha instilled certain properties, certain characteristics, certain attributes, certain capabilities in every living being. And those characteristics are described here. So first is Brahmanosya mukhamasid. Okay, so from its mouth, Brahmins came. Now, what is Brahmin? Brahmin indicates something or ability to acquire knowledge, acquire and use that knowledge. Okay. Now, later on, there was a social class, or not class, but a few people who focused on acquiring supreme knowledge. So they were called Brahmins. But here, it just indicates an ability to acquire and use knowledge. Every living being, including microorganisms, have ability to acquire knowledge. How different species acquire knowledge might be different, right? But every species have ability to acquire knowledge. And that ability is indicated here, that the creator, the Purusha, instilled this ability or provided this ability to every living being to acquire knowledge. Then second says, Bahu Rajanya Kritah. Bahu means arms. Rajanya means Kshatriya. Okay, so Kshatriyas came out of his arms. So Kshatriya again is not a social class, but Kshatriya indicates ability to protect. So every living being was given an ability to protect itself, to fight against different calamities and sustain. That ability, which was instilled in every living being, is described here as Rajanya. Later on, there were people who performed the activities which were related to protecting the society. So they were called Kshatriya or Rajanya. Uru tadasya yad Vaishya. Vaishya is, again, next class, which is more like a merchants, business people, that kind of a class. And Uru, thighs indicate ability to store, preserve. Now, again, that is an ability that was instilled in every human, every living being to preserve something or to acquire or collect or store something. And simple example, which is again applicable for every living being, including humans, we eat the food. Now, we don't continuously keep eating, right? We eat, then for a few hours, we consume whatever we have eaten, it gets stored, and that stored food gets consumed to perform different activities, then we eat again. So that ability of storing is indicated in Vaishya property. So that ability was instilled in every living being. So they can store the energy, they can store something and then use it on an ongoing basis or use it in future. And then rest of the life essential activities, including moving around and doing a lot of other physical activities, those are indicated by Shudra or Shudra property or Shudra characteristic. So this is not talking about the social classification. This is talking about 4 qualities, 4 attributes that were instilled in every living being as the life was being created on earth. Okay. So again, we need to understand these mantra and the interpretations in right context. And people who attack our culture, attack our scriptures, we should respond to them properly. That no, that is not what the meaning is. That is not what is said in our scriptures. What you're saying is wrong. This is what it means. This is what it says, and so on and so forth. This entire sukta has a lot of additional mantras. And what I did is, as I interpreted these mantras, I collected those in a book. And that book is available in Hindi, Marathi, and English. And it gives detailed explanation about each and every mantra, how scientific those mantras are, how they relate to the creation or manifestation of the universe, how it relates to various modern scientific theories, and so on and so forth. Okay. This book is not for profit making. Whatever little profit it makes, it goes to charity. But I'll encourage you to get a hold of this book and read and understand and educate yourself and also spread the knowledge. So you can go to my website and you can find the links about the book. It's available on Amazon in most of the countries. In India, it is available directly on the publisher's website. So all those details you will get on my website under the books section.
When you were discussing mantra 7, you talked about how Pashu Bali or sacrifice is something that wasn't something that was done. But sir, we see in temples like Rajarappa and other places where goats are still sacrificed, and Pashu Bali has its history also. So do you think that that Pashu Bali is a different type, or that is a wrong interpretation made by societal Hindus today?
Oh, very good question. So there are different aspects, right? What was written in the scriptures versus the traditions versus the culture. These are different things. These are kind of interrelated, but those are not same things, right? So yes, there are traditions of Pashu Bali in certain regions or in certain temples, but saying that it is written in your scriptures is wrong. Yes, that tradition came around for that temple, and if we really do some research, we will find where it came from. And in today's context, it's probably irrelevant or non-scientific. But if I start saying that, people get very upset. They get offended because people have belief system, and beliefs is not scientific, right? Belief is more emotional. You cannot prove something right or wrong based on science and say, okay, your emotions are wrong. It doesn't work like that. So that's why it is very difficult to talk about such specific activities. But I'll give you one simple example which you can relate to. Okay. So there was one Swamiji, he used to perform puja in the evening. Now, while performing puja in the evening, from the west, there was a lot of gust of wind, which used to disturb or which used to blow the fire off and stuff like that. So what he started doing is he stuck 2 sticks in the ground And he had a saffron colored cloth. That's all he had. So he put that cloth around those sticks and created a barrier for the wind. And his puja continued. Then, regularly he started doing that, whether there is wind or not, just to be on the safer side. After several years, that Swamiji passed away, and his disciples took over that process. They continued to put that cloth on the west. Eventually, that group split into multiple groups and spread across different regions, different parts of the world. And they continued the tradition of putting cloth on the saffron-colored cloth on the west. Many of them moved those pujas in the house or in the hall, and still they continued the tradition. Now, after thousands of years or hundreds of years, whatever you say, if you ask them, why do you do this? Oh, I don't know. My Swami Guruji did it, so I do it. Why did they do it? Their Guru did it, so they do it. Their Guru did it. So the original reason or the purpose was lost, and it continued as a tradition. And similar things have happened with many of our traditions, unfortunately, without we understanding what they really meant and why they really existed.
I guess my question is similar to Ojaswiji's question in a sense. You initially mentioned how we have I'm going to use these words very loosely, but we have this traditional understanding of what yajna is. But you explained how that's what the actual meaning is so different from how we usually understand it. But then we have also, and I have read books where, they talk about our rishis and munis doing yajna with the wood and the fire and throwing ghee and doing the mantras. So that is also there. Did it come about in the same way as this tradition, or is it mentioned in our texts that this is another way of doing yajna as well?
When you say you want to go from your home to office, you use a vehicle, right? And now vehicle is a general term. Now a bicycle can be vehicle, a scooter can be vehicle, a car can be vehicle. You take Ola or Uber, that can be a vehicle. You can take a bus, that is a vehicle. You take a train, that's a vehicle. All these are vehicles, right? Vehicle is an entity that will help you go from one place to other place. Typically, if you own a car and if you're going to office, you relate vehicle to the car, okay? Or if your family members, they say, oh, she uses car. But car is just one form of vehicle. One of the vehicles. Same way, yajna is a very broad and bigger concept. And yes, in our scriptures also, there are yajnas described and prescribed with specific activities like what you mentioned of lighting the fire, giving specific type of oblations. You cannot just burn any wood and say, oh, that was my yajna. No, for different purpose, what you put in the yajna is also important. So all those things are prescribed, and those are specific forms of yajna. But yajna in general means a process. And there also, when you look at traditional yajna, it is a process in which the fire is lit and certain oblations are given to achieve something different. And there are yajnas that are prescribed to get rain. So yeah, so your input is water oblations you give and the result is rain, right? So things like that. So those are scientific. Those are described in our scriptures. But that does not mean yajna only means fire and oblations.
Yes, absolutely. I think you just explained that the concept can be applied in different ways. It's a bit like how Brahman manifests in different forms. Yajna can be done in different forms. So thank you.
The mantra is actually how the rishis have heard it, right? It is in the universe. So nobody has written it. It is a universal truth. So you said somebody wrote it or something, right? And also the Purusha means it is like the human form we are considering, and then the universe started creating. Can you please clarify this?
I think you missed certain part in the beginning. Did you join from the beginning or did you join a little late, Rohitji? Okay, you're back on mute. Anyway, so yeah, so no, Purusha does not mean a man or a male human being. No, that is not how it is interpreted. And we talked about that in the beginning. It is just an energy. It is just a power that we call it as a Purusha. And then later on, so what that Purusha meant is a Shakti that kind of provides and protects for the universe. And then in social structure, in family structure, a male human being is responsible for similar activities. So he is called Purusha. But that is just a analogy of concept of Purusha applied in human society. But that is not, it does not, Purusha does not mean male human being. And I'm sorry, you asked one more question. I kind of got carried away. What was the other part of your question?
The mantra is actually the universal truth. The rishis have heard it, right? So, yeah, please.
Yeah. So there are a couple of different ways in which this can be explained. One is in meditative state, rishis heard it. And they had that ability of hearing those universal sounds. Okay. And some people say maybe like today we have 5 senses, or we say 6th sense. Maybe our society and humans were far more mature and they had additional abilities, additional senses. But in whichever way, they actually heard it in the universe. And they, when I say they wrote it, it is like whatever they heard, they kind of taught it to their disciples. So even if they have physically written it, so again, it's not that the art of writing did not exist or the script did not exist. That's not what it means. Of course, a lot of rishis back then preferred not to write anything, because if something is written, it can be stolen. So they used to qualify their disciples, and only to qualified disciples they used to pass on relevant knowledge. So that was another reason why a lot of things were not written in the beginning. And of course, over the years, some sages did realize that that can become a limitation eventually. So Maharshi Vyas, around 7000 BCE, took an effort to write all the Veds in like a proper written format. But that does not mean the art of writing did not exist, or old sages did not know how to write. It was just a practice that they followed of oral tradition, which is in fact followed in a lot of gurukuls where they teach Veda. They still follow oral tradition.
My question is this one. Sometime back, maybe some 3-4 months back, I saw another video. It was also pertaining to Purusha Sukta only. I immediately don't remember who did it. That gentleman gave an interpretation of Purusha Sukta, which was, as per him, it was meaning hidden secrets about generating power, electricity. And based on this interpretation, there has been already a power generation project which has been sanctioned by the government of India, and it is underway in Gujarat. Do you have any information about this, and can you put more light on this? Having said this, whatever you have told me now is very, very informative. I would like to be in touch with you in future also for knowing more and more information.
Probably read or heard about it from this. I don't know if you can see my mouse scrolling. On the left side, there are pictures of 5 people. The 5th one is me, but the 4th one is Venkata Ramananji.
I don't think it was this gentleman. I will. Okay. It was a video. Okay, I'll try to find out once again, and then I will share that link to you people whenever I find it. It was a talk program. It was a stage event. In that, this gentleman came and gave a talk.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Please share the link. My email address is here. But again, coming back to your question, it is very, very important to know that different interpretations of our scriptures are possible and intended also. There was a lot of knowledge which was scripted or encrypted in different mantras. So the same mantra can reveal different kinds of secrets or different kinds of scientific knowledges. It is very possible. And yes, there is a group, they have decoded Purusha Sukta and used it to create a power plant. Yes, I'm aware of it. Of course, I honestly don't know enough to comment on it, but I'm aware of it. And if you look for Venkata Ramananji, then he has a blog, and in his blog also he explains that.
Sure, I will look into that also. Thanks, Ji.
Paragji, you mentioned about the 4, like what we refer to as a Varnashram, the Brahman, Kshatriya, and you explained how they are different abilities and how people misunderstand it and then criticize it. So my question was, we did have our society structured in a way where there were groups of people who were Brahman and Kshatriya and Vaishya. Was the inspiration taken from that shloka mantra you mentioned, shloka, I think, the shloka you mentioned, was it from there they took the idea and then structured the society this way? Or was there a different resource or inspiration from somewhere else in our text that led us to arrange our society this way? If you know that, I would love to get to know. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So the social structure evolved over a period of time, right? And even if you look at purely at our scriptures, there are a lot of references that talk about some of these social structure aspects. The first important aspect is, I think, Mundakopanishad. It says Mundak or Mandukya, I forgot. But anyway, it says Janmana Jayate Shudraha. That means by birth, everybody is Shudra. And Samskara Dvija Uchyate. So depending on the training that they undergo, depending on knowledge they acquire, depending on the profession they select, they become whatever other path or whatever other social class, so to say, that they fall into that category. Also in Bhagavad Gita, you might have heard that Bhagavan Shri Krishna says, Chaturvarnam Maya Srishtam, and people just stop at that and start criticizing that, see, your God is saying that he created 4 varnas, but that is not the complete shlok. The shlok says, Chaturvarnam Maya Srishtam, Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. It doesn't say Janmasha, it says Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. So depending on the qualities and knowledge that people acquire, and depending on the professional or career path that they select, they fall into different varna. So again, in my book, I have, for that mantra itself, I have given a lot of explanation, and then I have a complete appendix that talks about this varna vyavastha and what was written in the scriptures and how it got evolved over generations and how the social structure was formed. Also on YouTube, if you look up for my name, I have a couple of talks. I think at least one is there on YouTube, which talks about casteism and where it came from. Those can be some good resources for you to get some more insights.